A 73-year-old janitor with Parkinson's disease just orchestrated the rescue of 12 American soldiers from behind enemy lines. He never left his chair. Here's how a forgotten war hero pulled off the impossible when everyone had given up hope. But first, you need to understand how invisible this man had become. Fort Campbell, Tennessee. For 3 years, Samuel Rivers had walked those same hallways as the base janitor, his hands trembling from Parkinson's disease, moving with the careful pace of a man whose body had endured decades of service. Young soldiers passed him with barely a glance. Private Johnson, fresh from basic training, muttered as he waited, "Come on, move it along." Samuel's response was measured. He simply continued his work, understanding the natural hierarchy of respect in military institutions. What those soldiers couldn't have known was what sat hidden in Samuel's modest apartment: a wooden box containing his Congressional Medal of Honor, 3 silver stars, and a letter from the President thanking Colonel Samuel Rivers for strategic leadership that preserved countless American lives. None of his colleagues at Fort Campbell were aware of his distinguished service record. The following morning, at 08:15 hours, Samuel was performing routine maintenance when the base alarm system activated, the alert reserved for immediate threats to American personnel. Colonel Thompson entered with obvious urgency. "Status report, now." Major Williams, clearly under stress. 12-man unit captured behind enemy lines. Public execution scheduled for 1400 hours. International broadcast planned. Thompson studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. Options? Captain Rodriguez indicated the problematic terrain. Region 7 Delta. 0 actionable intelligence. No friendly operations conducted there since the early 1980s. We're operating completely blind. Thompson slammed his hand on the table. There has to be something. Satellite imagery? Historical records? Anything? Sir, the files are classified or destroyed. We have nothing. From his position near the maintenance equipment, Samuel spoke quietly. "I have extensive knowledge of that region." Every officer in the room turned toward the voice. Colonel Thompson looked at him with barely concealed irritation. "Excuse me? Your maintenance staff. What could you possibly know about classified military operations?" The tone carried the dismissive authority of rank addressing a perceived interruption. Lieutenant Martinez shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, should we continue the briefing?" Thompson waved his hand. "Someone escort this gentleman back to his duties." Samuel remained where he was, his voice steady. "I planned and executed 63 strategic operations in Region 7 Delta between 1972 and 1985. The room fell silent, but the silence carried skepticism rather than respect. Thompson's expression hardened. "Sir, I don't know what you think you know, but this is a classified military briefing for qualified personnel only." Samuel looked directly at Lieutenant Martinez. "Son, what was your father's name?" "Carlos Martinez, sir, but I fail to see how that's relevant to." Samuel reached into his wallet, withdrew a photograph worn soft at the edges, and placed it gently on the tactical table. "Was this your father?" Martinez stepped closer, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition, then to something approaching shock. The photograph showed a young soldier in Vietnam-era combat fatigues, his father at 22 years old. Where did you get this?" "Because I carried Sergeant Carlos Martinez 3 miles through hostile territory when he took shrapnel from an improvised explosive device." "You have his eyes, Lieutenant." The room went completely silent. Samuel reached into his shirt pocket and withdrew a leather wallet so worn the edges had softened like fabric. From it, he extracted a military identification card, faded but unmistakably official. Colonel Thompson took the card with hands that had begun to tremble slightly. "Colonel Samuel Rivers, Special Forces Strategic Command, 42 years active duty." Thompson read the information once, then again, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Sir, are you Ghost Samuel Rivers?" That designation hit every officer in the room with immediate recognition. Ghost, the legendary strategic commander whose tactical innovations had become standard doctrine throughout Special Forces. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. "The Ghost who planned the Firebase Charlie extraction? The strategist behind Operation Silent Thunder," Williams added. Lieutenant Martinez was still staring at his father's photograph. "My father spoke of Ghost throughout my entire childhood. childhood. He credited you with saving not just his life, but his entire unit. Meanwhile, Private Johnson stood frozen, the weight of his morning's disrespect settling over him. Samuel's posture had shifted subtly, his back straightened just enough to suggest the command presence that had never truly left him. That was a different time, gentlemen. Our immediate concern is 12 American soldiers who need to come home. Colonel Thompson, now addressing Samuel with the respect due his rank. Colonel Rivers, with the utmost respect for your distinguished service record. Sir, you're 73 years old. Modern combat operations require physical capabilities that. Samuel raised his hand with quiet authority. Colonel Thompson, these hands shake from Parkinson's disease. My knees have been compromised by decades of field operations. My vision requires correction for detailed work. He paused, allowing the acknowledgement of his limitations to settle. However, my strategic thinking capabilities remain fully operational, enhanced, actually, by 4 decades of accumulated field experience. I propose coordinating this rescue operation from the command center. Your personnel execute field operations while I provide real-time strategic guidance based on my knowledge of that terrain. Martinez understood immediately. Remote tactical command? Precisely. I can visualize that terrain with greater accuracy than current satellite imagery. Every elevation change, every potential approach route, every defensive position that would be logical to establish. Colonel Thompson came to attention and rendered a salute. Colonel Rivers, we would be honored to have your strategic guidance. 20 minutes later, Samuel had assumed position at the primary tactical station. Multiple screens provided real-time intelligence feeds, communication channels, and positional data. The young officers arranged themselves around him, no longer maintenance staff being tolerated, but a master tactician surrounded by eager students. Samuel initiated radio contact. Rescue Alpha, this is Ghost Command. Radio check. Martinez's voice crackled through the speakers. Ghost Command. Rescue Alpha receiving loud and clear, standing by for guidance. Samuel's voice carried the authority of every successful mission he'd commanded. Outstanding, Alpha. We're bringing everyone home today. His coordination began with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. Rodriguez, reposition your team 200 meters east. There's a natural blind spot in the enemy's defensive perimeter that satellite imagery won't show you. Williams, initiate diversionary action on the southern approach. 3 smoke deployments at 30-second intervals. Martinez, when you hear the 3rd detonation, you'll have exactly 4 seconds at the northern breach point. The operation proceeded flawlessly until the radio crackled with urgent communication. Ghost Command, we have visual confirmation of significant enemy reinforcement. Estimated 30 additional hostiles approaching our position from the east. Samuel studied the multiple intelligence feeds, his experienced eye reading terrain features invisible to others. Understood, Alpha. There's an extraction route they won't anticipate. Ravine system, approximately 400 meters north of your current position. Rodriguez's voice carried obvious concern. Sir, that terrain appears impossible to navigate safely. Samuel's response was calm but certain. I've successfully guided 3 separate teams through that exact route under combat conditions. The passage exists. Trust the guidance. For the next 2 hours, Samuel provided continuous tactical direction to 14 personnel moving through terrain he hadn't physically encountered in 4 decades but remembered with the precision of muscle memory. Advance 10 steps forward, then adjust bearing 30 degrees to your right. There's a concealed ledge position that will support your weight. Feel along the rock formation for what appears to be a dead end. There's a narrow passage, approximately shoulder width. The water depth is chest level, but the current is significantly stronger than it appears. Link arms for stability. The radio crackled with the communication everyone had been waiting for. Ghost Command. All personnel extracted successfully. 12 hostages recovered. 0 casualties. Samuel leaned back in his chair, the weight of responsibility lifting from his shoulders. Outstanding execution, gentlemen. Outstanding. Colonel Thompson, who had observed the entire operation, approached Samuel's position. Colonel, that was the most precise tactical coordination I've witnessed in 20 years of service. Samuel's response was characteristically understated. Experience has its advantages, Colonel.
When the extraction helicopters appeared on the horizon approaching Fort Campbell, word had traveled throughout the installation with the speed that only significant news can achieve. As Samuel walked from the command center toward the landing area, he observed something remarkable. 500 personnel had formed a corridor from the building to the helicopter pad. The moment his feet touched the tarmac, every soldier, NCO, and officer came to attention simultaneously and rendered a salute. The silence was profound, not orchestrated, but the natural response of a military community honoring one of their own. Sergeant Murphy, one of the rescued soldiers, approached with obvious emotion. "Sir, your strategic guidance saved 12 lives today." Samuel's response reflected his lifetime of service. "That's our commitment to one another, Sergeant. We don't leave anyone behind." Private Johnson emerged from the crowd, clearly struggling with his earlier behavior. "Colonel Rivers, sir, this morning I spoke to you with disrespect." Samuel placed his weathered hand on the young soldier's shoulder. "Private Johnson, this morning you responded to what you could observe. Now you understand the complete picture. That's called professional growth, and I'm proud of you for recognizing it." Samuel's life changed in the weeks that followed, though not in ways that ignored the realities of his age or health condition. Colonel Thompson arranged for Samuel to serve as an occasional crisis consultant, called upon perhaps once every few months when the installation faced particularly complex strategic challenges that could benefit from his decades of experience. Additionally, Samuel began conducting informal professional development sessions, sharing tactical knowledge with junior officers who sought to learn from someone who had lived through military history. The more profound transformation was in how every person at Fort Campbell regarded him. No longer invisible, no longer dismissed as simply maintenance staff, but recognized as the decorated veteran he had always been. Private Johnson began visiting Samuel's quarters weekly, not from obligation, but from genuine desire to learn from someone who had participated in operations that were now studied in military academies. Lieutenant Martinez named his newborn son Samuel Carlos Martinez, honoring both his father's memory and the man who had saved his father's life. Samuel Rivers spent 3 years functionally invisible at Fort Campbell, not because his contributions were insignificant, but because no one had taken the time to understand his background and capabilities. Perhaps we should approach the veterans in our communities with the recognition that their service has earned them our respect. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.